When the going gets tough, the tough girls pivot. Okay, so it is 11:21 a.m. I am in Rockefeller Plaza. About less than an hour ago, I was driving to Chloe's house in Pelham, New York, and she called me with a little bit of a change in plan. So we're here. I am parked my car, walking my way through throngs of tourists at Rock Center, and walking into
Live from New York, it's Saturday night!
30 Rock, the icon where television history lives and breathes, home of NBC. And as of August 2023,
Chloe Melas, NBC News, New York.
One of NBC's newest correspondents is Chloe Melas, a longtime friend of mine and all-around boss. In fact, when our location was no longer available for the interview due to the power going out on her entire block, Chloe did what she always does: make it work. Okay, we finally made it upstairs after 3 elevator banks, several trips with all the equipment. We had to break it all down, take it off the trolley, sneak our way because we didn't want to use the service elevator because we didn't want to raise any red flags inside the NBC building. But Daniel, we made it. Daniel, by the way, is my videographer. You might be thinking, oh, they had to take a few elevators. What's so hard about that? Okay, so 30 Rock is 66 stories. It's the 65th tallest building in the United States, swarmed with tourists and also people who work there every day. I've heard some of those people saying that navigating the elevator banks is like trying to get to the next level of a video game. If you don't know where you're going, you could end up going in circles or getting stuck behind a locked door. But let me tell you, those elevators have tiny peacock logos on the floor and it's adorable. Anyway, thank goodness we had Chloe.
People have been like, you are intense. And I'm like, am I? My husband would be like, yes, you're intense. But I don't know. To me, I'm just efficient.
Leave it to Chloe to cut. She came down and she took charge. Like Daniel said, is she in production? I said, no, she's on air. She literally was a drill sergeant. She said, take that box off there, take that bag there. I'll carry this. You carry that. She grabbed the boxes and bags in her heels, no less, and guided us up the elevators to the office where we are now going to get the interview done. So have no fear. Chloe Melas is here running shit as usual, and we're going to get started. Chloe's story is one of hustle and persistence, whether it's breaking news or hiding in bushes to report on celebrities. No, seriously. And when devastation struck, needing to literally rebuild home from the ground up. How she did it all, and often in high heels, today on the Gratitudeology podcast.
Will you walk through the fire? Would you ride through the storm? Will you walk on a wire? Will you save me if I fall? Will you break through the madness? Set us down where we're safe. I'll be right here waiting till you find me again.
Okay. Chloe Melas, thank you for being here in your own home base of 30 Rock.
I know. And this is not where it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
But here we are.
Yes. By the way, can I just say that you are such a boss ass bitch? Like when you,
wait, we can curse? Okay, that's great.
All we want.
Oh my God.
It's just so amazing because you've been one of my best friends for like literally, I don't even know, like 15 years. But I love seeing you in your splendor. Like we walked in and you were like, okay, here's what we're going to do, guys. And you just were like a camp counselor / drill sergeant in the most amazing way. Like you just get shit done. Chloe is, by her own admission, militant. But she says she wasn't always that way.
I mean, my parents had to like force me to study, and I would lock my door growing up when I would come from school, turn on the music, pretend I was doing homework, lay all my books out on the bed, and I'd go to bed. I'd close my eyes and I'd sleep. I don't know why I was so tired.
Chloe describes her younger self as a bit of a slacker. But as her friend, I'm going to say that she was just banking for the rest of her career. Because she's one of those people that makes you stop and say, wait, she has the same 24 hours in a day that I do, right? And look, I'm not exactly someone who sits still a lot, but from a young age, Chloe was always on the move. Literally.
You know, I had a lot of transitions looking back. I lived in Saudi Arabia until I was 2.5. Don't remember that.
Wait, why did you live in Saudi Arabia?
That's where my parents met. My dad was from Athens, Greece, and my mother was from Atlanta, Georgia. But she went to go live with her parents, her father worked for Lockheed Martin and was selling airplanes to the royal family for Lockheed Martin in the 80s. And it was like a cool time to be in the Middle East as an expat. And so she met my dad there. It was his first job working, designing a hospital. And so they met and then eventually were married. And then they lived there for a few years. She had me in Atlanta, but they immediately moved a few weeks later to Saudi. And so I was there. Then I was in Atlanta till I was 10. And then we moved to Texas.
It sounds like kind of a cool childhood. But when the family landed in Texas, Chloe's mom insisted she went to private school.
My mother and I, we have a very complicated relationship, but I love my mother very much. Probably the title of my memoir. And she really wanted me to go to private school. She never went to private school. Maybe that's where it stemmed from. She always wanted the best for her children. And in her eyes, going to like the best private school with the best campus, the most expensive school in town was what was right for us. I didn't have the grades even at the age of 10 because I was just not good at math. And I just was never a good test taker. I was always a C student, but I know that like some of the like smartest people were actually C students. So now I wear that with a badge of honor. I worked really hard for that C.
Absolutely.
By the way, like busted my ass for a C, busted my ass to just get a D- in math, by the way. Like that was with tutoring and everything. Anyway, went to another private school for 7th and 8th grade, and that was traumatizing. I was severely bullied and like had food thrown at me in the lunchroom. Spent most of my days in the nurse's office hiding from my classmates. It's like haunted me to this day. And I've also experienced adult bullying too. And those people will remain nameless. But it's like kind of crazy how like that follows you too. Like you think that you outgrow certain things. And to me, it just like sort of changes its shape.
Chloe thought everything would change after high school. And for those of us who started college before the last 10 years or so, we remember it well. Going to the mailbox every day. Finally, the excitement of getting that big envelope in the mail, the one that had the bumper sticker in it, you know, the one that meant you got in.
I wanted to go to the University of Missouri. And I was really beyond thrilled when I got that thick envelope acceptance letters. And they had this NBC affiliate, and look at us now at 30 Rock. They had this NBC affiliate student TV station, and I was so excited.
Chloe's mom, however, had secretly put in an application somewhere else.
My mom just felt as though Auburn University in Alabama would be a better fit because they were leaving Texas, going back to her home state of Georgia. And she felt that I would want to drive home on the weekends because that's what she did in college and that I wouldn't want to be a plane flight away.
Although it wasn't what Chloe thought she wanted, she's grateful for how things turned out.
Now, it's a blessing in disguise, again, because I had a fantastic experience at Auburn. And now their student-run TV station, which is really weird to say out loud, but it's real. And this is like, I guess, a humble brag. It's named after me. Had I gone to Mizzou, I probably would have just been like a little fish there in a big pond. But I became like a big fish in this like little pond at Auburn. And I got so much hands-on experience.
Chloe even landed an interview to intern at the Colbert Report. She had only been to New York City once before until she decided she'd hop on a plane to the Big Apple and secure that internship in person.
So this is actually the moment where I learned that I'm competitive. So like, I'm really terrible at sports. Like, as you heard, I wasn't like ambitious in school. I was on the school's newspaper, and I was the assistant editor of my high school newspaper. But, I just sort of like did like enough.
Then her friend got an internship at ESPN.
And I said, wait, hold on, we can get internships like that? Why didn't anybody tell me? So I applied to Viacom, had MTV and Comedy Central and all this stuff. And I was a political science minor. So I think they thought I had politics in my blood. But they called me up and they were like, do you want to interview for the Colbert Report? And so I do not know where this came from, but I went to my teachers at Auburn and I said, I have to fly to New York next week. And I got money from my mom and I bought a black suit. I told the internship coordinator that I was going to happen to be in New York.
Flight attendants prepare for takeoff.
I flew to New York, put my black suit on, showed up to the Colbert Report. They're all eating cereal in pajamas, basically, like a cool vibe. And I show up and the intern coordinator, Adam, who ended up hiring me, said that he thought I was like there to audit them. He was like, what? And so he said it was the best interview he'd ever had for an intern and at the time. And I got my internship and I fell in love with New York and I fell in love with I didn't want to leave. But how you stay in this expensive city and how you get a job. I mean, that was sort of like the beginning of, okay, if I want to do this, I'm going to have to like hustle and figure this out. And that's when I started like this like little lion kind of came out of nowhere. Everybody was shocked.
Most aspiring on-air reporters are advised to start small, go to a local station, often in the middle of nowhere, and work their way up.
And everybody said, you can go back to New York in like 10 years when you're 30, but not right now. And I was like, I don't want to go. I'm going to stay here. So I'm going to plant my flag. So I moved in with a girlfriend in the East Village and my parents were like, you've got to find a job. And I was applying everywhere, just striking out left and right.
And wouldn't you believe it, Chloe's mom knew just what to do. Remember, she had moved back to Atlanta, where CNN is headquartered.
She said, call our neighbor. He is a correspondent at CNN. Call him. I was like, you're crazy. He's never met me. She's like, call him. So I called him. And I left a message and I just said, hi, Gary Tuckman. I'm Chloe and I really need a job. Can you call me? And he called me and he got me an interview and I got the job. And I was like a breaking news, entry-level news assistant. It's like the lowest possible job there. And but it's a hard one to get.
A hard one to get and a hard one to do. Let me tell you, TV news internships are a grind. Your day might start at 5 a.m. or it might end at 1 a.m. And it's super fast-paced. It takes a specific kind of person to do it and come back wanting more.
You make no money and your hours are wild and you did all sorts of jobs. I would like prompt. So when anchors are reading their scripts on TV, someone's turning the knob in a control room. It's the most high stressful situation because you're like 22 and you're like so exhausted, but you want to do a good job and you're being screamed at. And the anchor's like, what the heck? What was that? Who was that? I'm like, oh my God.
But there were parts of the job where Chloe, she thrived, especially when it came to building relationships.
They were cool jobs. And one of the jobs I had was bringing guests in to their studios and miking them up, putting their microphone on them, putting their earpiece in. I met everyone. I met Al Sharpton. I became friendly with Joan Rivers. I met editors. I met celebrities. And it was cool.
Turns out the part of the job she found cool would lead her right to her next job. Chloe became friendly with an editor at People magazine who knew someone who was looking to hire young, hungry reporters. That someone was Bonnie Fuller. As in the former editor-in-chief of Marie Claire, of Cosmo, of Glamour, of Us Weekly. Stars Are Just Like Us? Yeah, she created that. And now she was revamping a celebrity news site, HollywoodLife.com.
She interviewed me. She liked the fact that I had come from CNN, and she hired me. And I stayed with her for the next 7 years, and it was the toughest thing I've ever experienced. But it's where I learned, it's really where I learned everything. So like, there was a lot of beautiful, good things, right? I mean, Bonnie always said, if you go, you get, right? Like, go out there, pick up the phone and call somebody, right? I learned how to call, the police, to, public information officers. Like, I learned how to call publicists and agents. I met everybody who ran Hollywood, whether they took me seriously or not, but I met everybody, right? I knew my way in and out of this city, and I made lifelong friends. I met you along the way.
Chloe learned a lot while working. Like, a lot.
I worked nonstop. I worked all the time. I worked every single weekend. I was basically, she had an assistant, but that was not enough. I would basically be her assistant, and writing articles, I did not know how to write at all. And she told me early on that you need to go out at night. And I was like, what do you mean I need to go out at night? I was kind of a homebody. She wanted me out at every single bar, restaurant where celebrities were. And that sounds fun. That was not that alone. I have no money. There's no expense account. And I'm going out and I'm spying on celebrities or waiting outside of Jennifer Aniston's apartment to see if she's coming out because everyone thinks she has a baby bump. Looking back, it's so cringe. And go to every single movie premiere. I swear to you, I would go to 5 movie premieres a week, which sounds so cool. I would stand in the freezing cold, the last spot on the carpet. My feet hurt because I would be wearing heels. Eventually I learned, skip the heels.
Chloe cut her teeth at Hollywood Life for 7 years. And during that time, she managed to break some pretty major news. No, it didn't have anything to do with Justin Bieber and who he was dating or Kim Kardashian's 72-day marriage to Kris Humphries. When I say major news, I mean major news.
I broke that Hillary Clinton was running for president. And it's all in pink and yellow font.
Yep, you heard that right. Let's rewind.
I was at the Hollywood Life offices, and Hillary Clinton was coming in and out of the building that we were all in. And so I would stop and take a picture with her. And I went up to her floor one evening and I was walking around. I'm wow, this looks like a campaign office. If I guess, I've never seen one, but I assume this is one. And I remember calling Gary and and he put me in touch with somebody else at CNN, I think. And they were like, what? And I'm no, I swear she is. And I wrote it for Hollywood Life. And I was the first outlet. I always had a nose for news, right? Mm-hmm. I've always known I've definitely living in the right profession. This profession is perfect for my complicated persona, my type A, hungry, talkative personality,
Yeah. Soon enough, Chloe found herself talking to a much bigger audience. She was appearing on behalf of Hollywood Life on local shows on The Talk, on CNN. She was even on a daily show called The Gossip Table.
And then in a few years, I was finding myself, and I wasn't the last person on the carpet anymore. And I was moving up a little bit. I was getting invited to things. I was getting invited to things with a guest. And so I was breaking some stories, and you gotta, I've got blisters all over my feet. And then a few years later, my blisters toughened up, and so did my spirit in a way. And I became tough.
During this time, Chloe met her husband, Brian. By the time she was approaching her 30th birthday, she was ready for a change.
Gossip's been around forever and people are always going to be interested. I just outgrew it. I mean, I couldn't be doing that type of if you want to call it journalism. It's one thing to like read about that, but it's another thing to be in it and reporting. And there were times where I just was like, this hurts my soul, doesn't feel right. I don't want to report these things. It feels so personal. I mean, I really was sort of embarrassed by it. And I was like, I want to do something different. I want to like elevate it. I want to do something a bit more serious.
Chloe, who had sworn off breaking news forever, went back to CNN.
It was wonderful to be at CNN. I was so happy to be back. And I had made friends that I had stayed in touch with when I was the news assistant. And I now knew pretty much how to write. I had to write in a different style, not like, hey, girlfriend, hey, CNNers. But it was a tough first year. These people, a lot of them have like master's degrees and went to fancy schools and, have worked at newspapers. And, I was coming from Hollywood life. So I felt like I had to really earn my stripes again and really prove myself in like a serious newsroom. And so this was also not a television job. The person who hired me said, like, you're not going to do any television. Like, that's not what this job is. And I was okay with that. Because like I said earlier, like I had experienced some adult bullying and I was like, you know what? Like, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want to do TV. I don't care. I just want to like be a journalist. What does that mean? I already was a journalist, but I wanted to like be the journalist that I thought was a journalist in my mind, right? With like the pencil in the ear, kind of like Rachel McAdams in Spotlight, right? And I wasn't sure if I could do that with entertainment, had a baby, went away on maternity leave.
When Chloe came back, it was October 17th, the height of the #MeToo movement and the reckoning against widespread sexual harassment, particularly in Hollywood. Suddenly, entertainment news was the work of serious journalists.
And came back, and Brian Stelter sent me a text message, and he was like, did you see this Kevin Spacey story in BuzzFeed? And I was like, no, I haven't seen it. This was just like a week or so after Jodi Kantor, Megan Twohey, and then Ronan Farrow published their stories on Harvey Weinstein. I was back like 1 week, fresh off maternity leave, mom guilt, pumping breast milk, figuring out this commute. We moved out to Westchester, figuring out how to take the train to work. It was like 22-year-old Chloe all over again, so stressed out, so worried. And I said, Brian, no, I haven't read it. And I read the story and I'm like, wow, this raises a bunch of red flags. Anthony Rapp is claiming that Kevin Spacey created an inappropriate situation at his apartment one night, but nothing ever happened. And Anthony was a teenager and Kevin Spacey was a grown man at the time. So it wasn't saying that anything illegal happened. It was just like, this is a really creepy, uncomfortable night between a child and an adult man. But it happened like 20 plus years ago and there were no witnesses. And I said to Brian, wow, I'm going to look into this. And I closed myself in a conference room and I found hundreds of people that had worked on House of Cards. And I found phone numbers and I just sat in this room and probably the pregnancy hormones. I like called so many people and I broke a huge story 3 days later that got Kevin Spacey fired from House of Cards.
How many people do you think you called?
Probably like over 200 people. Mm-hmm.
I really don't think people realize what it takes to be a journalist.
And then I got to do, and then we included, after going through all the legal vetting, 8 of those stories, I think. And one of those stories was very serious. And it was a man who didn't want to share his identity, but he was able to give us the necessary proof that, from his side of things, that Kevin Spacey had allegedly sexually assaulted him. And so this set off this massive domino effect. And Kevin Spacey was fired from House of Cards. And he was fired from a Sony movie called All the Money in the World. And, it was wild. And then I was on TV. And literally, they put me on TV. Jeff Zucker at the time threw me on TV.
Kevin Spacey, by the way, denies the allegations. And as we all know now, there were plenty more serious entertainment stories that needed to be told.
Free Britney!
When do we want it?
Now! Free Britney!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Free Britney!
That was
the past
so sad
decade
to
plus.
report on that. I grew up being the ultimate Britney Spears fan. I mean, I remember getting my first Britney Spears CD. And so it was so sad to see the sort of fall from grace, and also, to see things like her, shaving her head. But then we learn later on what was really happening. And, as a mom of 2 boys myself, I had a lot of empathy for that. And, as I was reporting this out, we learned that this conservatorship was very toxic and that she did not need to be in this conservatorship, and how it went on for so long is really unbelievable. And so, early on when I started reporting for CNN about Britney Spears, we weren't hearing much at all from Britney's camp. We were really only getting access from her dad, who was her conservator. And so reporting was hard, really. And when I would do the reporting, I would get a lot of negative feedback from people because they felt as though we were only telling her dad's story. And as we're covering this trial, I mean, I never could have imagined that it would become so massive. And it's really because of her unbelievable fans. Her fans were relentless and shining a light on this terrible situation that she was in. Thank goodness she is getting the space and the privacy that she needs, because she has experienced a lot of trauma. And I remember sitting in the courtroom when Britney was on the phone and basically told the world what she had been going through. And I ran outside, and I'm like on TV, like with Wolf Blitzer or something, in 2 seconds, sharing this. And it was a massive story. And then I got to do this special with one of my good friends, Allison Camerata, for CNN. And it was, we learned a lot. We got to meet some of her fans who were, leading the charge in the Free Britney movement. And it was, an incredible time to be reporting on something like this, but it's also just so sad to see. And obviously conservatorships are something that need more attention, right? There's so many people in conservatorships, and there's conservatorship abuse. And, I hope that can continue to be a topic that journalists are pursuing.
You may have caught in that story that Chloe herself is the mom of 2 boys, but her path to motherhood was not easy.
Yeah, I mean, it was something that was super dark at the time. I mean, I just assumed we would have sex and get pregnant, and it was not working. And this went on for a year, and we were like, oh my God, so we can't have kids. We're not gonna have kids. What are we gonna do? So I spiraled, but I did the best thing I knew how to do, which is like do the research, find the doctor. And we found this really wonderful doctor, Dr. Reichman, and he's amazing at Weill Cornell, and I love him so much. And he was like, you got to do IVF. And so we did IVF, and it was really tough. And it was a terrible strain on our marriage. We'd been married for like 2 years. We had conversations about maybe we'll divorce. Obviously, like those were conversations had in very like fraught emotional moments. But you wake up the next day and it's like, okay, I have an appointment at the doctor. And then we go to the doctor together. He was amazing. He showed up to every single doctor's appointment. And we had Leo. And then when Leo was a year old, we were like, okay, we're going to do IVF again. And we did it, and we got pregnant again.
Chloe and I both know what it's like to be grateful for that science and access to it, and having it work for us.
We know that there are so many people whose journeys don't end in a baby, and also individuals that have to go through IVF many, many times.
Yeah.
And like we paid out of pocket one of the times for IVF. So I know how expensive it is. And I did reporting when I was at CNN about the inequity of fertility insurance in this country, which is wild.
Then Chloe did one of my favorite things. She made her mess her message.
I decided to share on social media, I went through IVF and it is not all rainbows and it's tough. And next thing you know, People Magazine's like writing an article about it. I'm like, oh my gosh. And then people are like, can you come on our podcast and talk about it? And can you come speak here? And then I got like an award from Resolve, the National Infertility Organization. And then Brian sharing his story. And, he ended up like doing a fundraiser and raising like over 80 grand for couples at Cornell or individuals at Cornell to do IVF. I mean, like, it's been like a journey that we never thought that we would be on, but like we have gratitude. We are grateful for this like tribe that we're in now, right? It's like the tribe we didn't ever know we were going to be in, that we didn't want to be in. Now we're in it and we're so happy we're in it.
Chloe and Brian were able to complete their family, and it's a beautiful family, living a beautiful life, really. She has an amazing job. She's killing it. They're settled in a lovely house in the suburbs, one they've put their entire life savings into renovating. It's January 2020. I'm sure you remember it well.
Now to growing concerns about the deadly coronavirus officially hitting the U.S. Here's what we know. A Washington state resident fell
this
ill
actually
after
isn't a
returning
story
from Wuhan,
about
China,
COVID.
where the outbreak-
It takes place on the backdrop of COVID, which must have made it all that much more terrifying.
It was January 2020, and Luke was 6 months old. Leo was like 2.5. And we put the kids to bed, and Brian and I were sitting in front of this fireplace, all cozy, and we're watching a movie and we're talking.
Like so many others, this would be one of the last normal evenings for a while, but for a different reason.
And I remember looking over into our living room, seeing this huge lamp that we had, this massive lampshade, and I saw like some smoke underneath it, but just like a little bit. And I didn't think anything of it. I told Brian, and Brian's like, open some windows. You know, he opened the front door, and we're like standing there, but we weren't really worried. And then I went upstairs to check on the kids, but I didn't open their rooms. I didn't open their doors because they're sleeping. And when you put babies to bed, you don't want to wake them up within an hour because then they'll never go back to bed. It's so hard to get your kids to sleep.
But that little voice inside Chloe's head, that mother's intuition, said to look again.
I just said to Brian a few minutes later, I was like, I don't know, why don't you go upstairs and check? Because I don't know, I think everything's fine, but it kind of smelled a little funny. And so he went upstairs and he says that he heard one of the children coughing. And so I had said, go check on the baby's room. He went into our 2-year-old's room. And so he switched the light on and he called out for me. And he's like, come upstairs. And the room was like not thick, but like there was smoke all over the room. It was like, you know, someone was having a campfire in the room, right? I mean, like you could still see, but there was like smoke everywhere. We're like, what the heck is this?
They figured there must be a small issue with the fireplace and called the fire department for some help.
I was like, please come, please turn your sirens off. This is no big deal. You're going to be in, you're going to be out. I just need somebody to show me how to like what to do with the fire. Like, how do you put it out? It's not a gas fireplace. And they were like, okay, well, we'll come, but the ambulance has to come too. And we can't turn the sirens off. The fire department came. We ended up having to wake up the baby, and the fire department was looking around with these like heat-seeking detector devices that they scan the walls to see if there's heat behind the walls. And we were sitting in the basement and they screamed out like, you got to get out. And one of the firemen came down, or 2 of them, and they said, you got to leave. And I was like barefoot. Lukey's in his little sleep sack. Leo has like no shoes on. And they said, leave. And Brian came over like 15 minutes later and he's like, the house is gone. The house is gone. I'm like, I'm looking at the house. The house isn't gone. He's crying. And he's like, they're ripping apart the house. There's a fire behind the walls. They're like breaking every room with axes. And they had to do it. And they had to like find the fire.
The house was gone. Only the structure remained. All their belongings gone. And it seemed like their chance to rebuild might also be gone.
The pandemic began in March of 2020 and they stopped all critical building. So I had to reach out to the governor's office to try to get permission to build, to say that like, we're going to run out of insurance money. We're going to be homeless. We don't have a place to live. We're not going to, like lay out like a true testament that like a case as to like, and that's the journalist in me, right?
It also brought out the gratitude in her for all the ways people showed up for her and her family. There was her colleague, Chris Cuomo, who helped her get in touch with the right people in the governor's office to plead her case. And then there were the strangers.
Strangers would show up at the door and just be like, we heard what happened and we want to bring this to you. And I would be crying in like sweatpants, and we would sit down on the couch and I would be talking to a stranger that I'd never met. And it was so overwhelming and touching, and this sense of community. And I didn't want to feel like a victim. And it was like very hard to like accept the help too. And someone was like, just accept the help, right? Like, people are also not just doing it for you, they're doing it for themselves too. So you have to like just let people help you. And so
beautiful testament. And what an interesting, sometimes we learn the biggest lessons about community and gratitude and love and outpouring from the hardest times.
Stuff. Stuff. I had so much stuff. I love things. I love to collect coffee cups and little trinkets. And, I have every single birthday card, from the beginning of time. And so I remember like looking around at all my stuff that night with the fire chief. And he said something that I've said before, which is, if you guys had waited any longer to go into your children's room, this would have been a much different weekend. Meaning that, the smoke inhalation would have ultimately like taken their lives and potentially us had we gone to sleep, right? Or not realized it in time. And so that stuff meant nothing to us. We didn't care about any of it. All you need is your family and your animals, and everybody ended up getting out safe.
With that outpouring of support and a newfound sense of gratitude, the family rebuilt their house and moved back in. And soon enough, Chloe felt that pull to try something new in her career once more.
I mean, it was like my professional secret that I wanted to work at NBC News, because to me, that's like the pinnacle of the place to work, and the Today Show and nightly news. And, but I never shared that out loud. When I'd go back to Auburn and they'd be like, so where are you going to be in like 5 years or 10 years? And I would think to myself, well, I know where I want to be, but I don't want to say it because I think it sounds crazy to say it out loud because it might not happen. And I don't want to jinx it. And so in news, you're under contract. And so my contract was up. It sounds fancy. It's not fancy. It's just how this business works. And my contract was coming up. And, sort of like the Marilyn Monroe movie, The 7-Year Itch, I'd been at CNN for almost 8 years. And I remember just being like, should we try now? Should we just see if there's any opportunities at NBC? And so I started having interviews. And a lot of interviews later, I got a phone call that they wanted to offer me a job. And I mean, I am so happy, but it is such a pinch me moment. I mean, to walk into 30 Rock is like, I think I like walk around with like this permanent, like crazy looking smile on my face. Like Jimmy Fallon and Seth Meyers, and like you'll like bump into Hoda in the hallway, or Al Roker, or Savannah Guthrie, and it's just, everybody has been so kind, and it's been amazing. And it's sort of like I don't know how I got here.
But then Chloe corrects herself, or at least stops to give herself some credit. She may not know exactly why her dream came true, but she does know it took a hell of a lot of work.
When you look back, it's like it was a lot of work to get here. It was 16, 17 years of non-stop working, and there is no secret to it. All I didn't do anything special. I just kept my head down and I worked and I did the work, and plenty of moments where I was like crying or in bed crying and thought I can't do this anymore, or really tough experiences or really tough stories, and I questioned it, but I just kept going, and I knew that this is the path that I wanted for myself, and I just really stayed true to the mission. And it's been wonderful.
And here you are.
I brought Luke here, and he's so excited, and like they're all excited. They call me like NBC News Chloe. My husband grew up watching NBC, both local and national, and his parents are like diehard Today Show fans. And so is Brian. So like to them, it's like the coolest thing ever. So
well, to all of us, it's the coolest thing ever. And I'm so grateful for you sharing that is literally what it takes. You're like, you said, I don't know how I got here. I do. I know how you got here.
But then you get here and it's like, the work is not done.
The work is not done.
But then it's like, you get here and it's like, all right, like
roll up your sleeves.
Yeah.
Round 16, round 17.
Chloe thinks her drive is just part of her makeup, and she's grateful for it.
I truly believe you're like born with ambition or you're not. Like my mother and all the things that she wanted for me, like, sure, like a lot of it was like her dream, right? But if I didn't want it, I would not be doing it, right? So you can only can't push a rope, right? And so, all the things she's pointed me in the direction of my mom, like it all, has worked out along the way.
Chloe Melas, it sure has worked out, and I can't wait to see what else you do. By the way, if you didn't think being a network reporter was enough, Chloe has also written a New York Times bestseller called Luck of the Draw. Be sure to check it out. And of course, you can also catch her on Instagram at Chloe Melas or on NBC News. That's all for today. Remember, if you like what you heard, if it impacted you in any way, and if you think it's a message other people in your life might like to hear, I'd be so grateful if you'd give me 5 stars, leave a quick little comment. Those things really help. And share this podcast with your friends, either on social media or just word of mouth. I'm on a mission for us all to help each other focus on expanding our attention towards what's good in the world rather than focusing on what's bad, one person at a time. If we all did that, even to our own little sphere of influence, the world has the potential to be a much more radically awesome place. Stick with me, friends. I've got your back. We're in this together, and it's a great day to see the greatness in the day. See you next time. The Gratitudeology podcast is written, executive produced, and hosted by me, Jamie Hess. Sound design and studio production by Gotham Production Studios. Our theme song is Maze by Hills, sung by Nadia Ali. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Gratitudeology.